In the early morning hours of April 22nd, 2016, Pike County Dispatch received a 911 call from Bobby Joe Manley. Ms. Manley reported that she and others had made a very gruesome discovery, first at the house of Chris and Gary Rhoden, located at 4077 Union Hill Road in Piketon, Ohio, in Pike County, Ohio, and then at the home of Frankie Rhoden and Hanna Hazel Gilley at 4199 Union Hill Road, also in Piketon, Ohio, in Pike County, Ohio. All four of these individuals were found deceased. It was later determined that they had died from multiple gunshot wounds. A short time later, more victims were found. First, Dana Rhoden, Christopher Jr. Rhoden, and Hanna May Rhoden were discovered in their home at 3122 Union Hill Road, Piketon, Ohio, in Pike County, Ohio, also deceased from multiple gunshot wounds. Later in the day, an eighth and final victim, Kenneth Rhoden, was found in his home located at 1084 Left Fork Road in Raritan, Ohio, also in Pike County, Ohio. The Pike County Sheriff's Office quickly called BCI in to investigate, and it became apparent pretty early on that whoever committed these crimes likely knew the Rhoden, Manley, and Gilley family, and also that weapons with silencers had likely been used, as some of the victims had been killed while they were sleeping within close proximity of one another without waking. Additionally, Your Honor, the investigation showed whoever committed the crimes removed the phones of most of the victims, along with trail cams and a DVR located at the victims' residences. Ultimately, the investigation led investigators to consider the Wagner family of Edward Jake Wagner, George Wagner IV, and their parents, Angela and George Billy Wagner, as potential suspects. As the investigation progressed, investigators found shell casings at the Wagner's residence on Peterson Road that matched some of the shell casings that had been left behind at some of the crime scenes. Investigators also found receipts and video evidence of the Wagners making purchases of shoes during the same month of the homicides that matched identically the shoe tread marks left in blood at one of the scenes, both in sizes and in style. Ultimately, agents interviewed the Wagners at the Canadian-U.S. border, where more evidence was confiscated, including a laptop. Investigators also confiscated some of the Wagners' phones and obtained and reviewed financial documents and accounts belonging to the Wagners. In the course of the investigation, investigators also found that the Wagners were purchasing many items in preparation for these homicides in the 2 to 3 months leading up to the homicides. Items such as brass catchers, ammunition, magazines and clips, a phone jammer, and ultimately items for building silencers for different caliber weapons. Investigators also found screenshots on the laptop that was confiscated in Montana that revealed that the Wagners were, quote, hacking into Facebook accounts of at least 2 individuals by accessing their accounts without permission. One of the screenshots taken revealed that there was a growing dispute between Jake Wagner and Hanna May Rhoden over their then 2-year-old daughter. Jake and Hanna began dating when Hanna was very young, only 13 years old. She conceived their daughter when she was age 15 and Jake was age 20. Eventually, she began seeing someone else and became pregnant with that person's child. Jake grew to be upset with Hanna over the fact that Hanna was exposing Sophia to people that he believed were not, that she should not be around. In the meantime, Jake was pushing Hanna to go to court and sign documents regarding custody of their shared child. Hanna resisted that idea. In December of 2015, sent a message to another individual and told that person that she would, quote, never sign papers ever, they will have to kill me first. That message was seen first by Angela Wagner, who took a screenshot of it, and later it was shown to Jake. As it turns out, the Facebook page of the other person that Hanna was talking to at that time was one of the 2 that we know the Wagners were monitoring. 2 months later, investigators saw evidence of the Wagners beginning to prepare for these homicides, and 4 months after Hanna Rhoden sent that message, she and 7 members of her family were dead. Other evidence investigators found revealed that Jake, George, and Angela Wagner had executed custody documents that designated Jake and Hanna's daughter would go to Jake if Hanna were to die. They also executed documents saying that Jake and Hanna's daughter and that George's son would both go to Angela if Jake or George also met an early demise. These forms were printed off the Wagner computer on April 3rd of 2016, less than 3 weeks prior to the homicides, but they were filled in to appear as if they had been executed 1 and 1.5 years prior to that. One of them bore the purported signature of Hanna Rhoden, and all of them bore what purported to be the notarization of Rita Newcomb, which is Angela Wagner's mother. Those documents were submitted to the lab at BCI, and they determined that Hanna May probably did not sign that form, and that signature purporting to be Rita's was also probably not signed by her. And that is just kind of one of their designations, Your Honor. Since that time, we have learned from Ms. Newcomb that in fact she did not sign or notarize any of those documents, and that she believed that her daughter, Angela Wagner, had. She also indicated that Angela Wagner had asked her to lie to the authorities and say that Rita had in fact notarized the 3 documents in question. Ultimately, Ms. Newcomb did not feel that she could or should continue to lie for her daughter, and she sat down with us and told us the truth. We have also now learned unequivocally that Hanna Rhoden also did not sign the form that purported to be signed by her either. Instead, one of the Wagners forged her name at the same time that Rita Newcomb's signature was forged. Just before the indictment in this case, Your Honor, in November of 2018, investigators found the burnt-up remains of a silencer from the Wagner's property at Peterson Road. It appeared to be a prototype that had failed. We have since learned that that is in fact true. Most recently, Your Honor, the state sat down with Jake Wagner, who has provided the state with many more details regarding his offenses, some of which were very consistent with what the state already knew and with the evidence that had already been collected. Some of the information, however, that was provided by Jake was new. In addition to the information that Jake provided us, what he told us led us to discover some evidence that had yet to be recovered, specifically the weapons that were used in these offenses, along with vehicles that were used during these offenses, including one that was bought specifically to use the night of the homicides only. The information that Jake provided clearly implicated he and each members of his family, to include Billy, Angela, and George Wagner, as being guilty of all the counts contained in the indictments filed in this matter. Based on the totality of the information now known by the state, including the forthright statements of the defendant, we have overwhelming evidence that the defendant and the 3 co-defendant members of his family are in fact responsible for planning and carrying out the homicides of Chris Rhoden, Gary Rhoden, Frankie Rhoden, Hanna Hazel Gilley, Dana Rhoden, Hanna May Rhoden, Christopher Jr. and Rhoden, and Kenneth Rhoden, which all occurred on or about April 22nd of 2016. Offenses to which the defendant now admits. Jake admitted that in the late evening hours of April 21st, 2016, into the early morning hours of April 22nd, 2016, is when they committed these homicides. We know that they trespassed into each of the 4 residences where the victims were found with the intent to kill them, and that they were armed with firearms, at least 2 of which had homemade silencers affixed to them when they did so. We know that they conspired together and planned these homicides for the months that led up to the offenses, and that all 4 co-defendants took part in that, as well as making various purchases to accomplish their goal. We know that they removed the phones of all but 2 of the victims, and cameras and other surveillance equipment of the victims in order to avoid detection. Additionally, we know that they destroyed those items, along with trying to destroy and discard in a concealed manner the silencer prototype, along with all the other evidence in this case, including the weapons, ammunition, and other incriminating items. We know that they forged documents to make them appear to be genuine, and that they asked others to lie to cover up this particular crime. We know that they hacked into the Facebook accounts of at least 2 individuals, and that allowed them access to information that ultimately became the motive for these crimes. We know that the defendant engaged in a pattern of corrupt activity by acting as part of a criminal enterprise with the members of his immediate and some extended family members while acting individually, or while being aided and abetted by the other members of this, quote, criminal enterprise, in committing the offenses of aggravated murder, aggravated burglary, and other offenses contained in the indictment. At this point, as noted, Your Honor, the defendant has in essence confessed and apologized for committing these offenses with his family members, and admits to personally causing the death of 5 of the 8 victims, and either committing all of the other offenses contained in the indictment directly or by being complicit in them. We appreciate his admissions and his motive for doing so. I would note, lastly, Your Honor, for the record, that all these offenses occurred in Pike County, Ohio, or if they occurred in another county, they were committed as a part of a continuing course of conduct such that venue is properly placed in Pike County pursuant to 2901.12 of the Ohio Vice Code.
Mr. Wagner, are there any amendments, corrections, or additions that you wish to make to the statement of facts just given by Ms. Kanapos?
Yes, Your Honor. I agree to what the state has provided, and I'm deeply and very sorry.
Do you have any amendments or corrections or additions that you wish to make to the statement of facts that Ms. Canepa just read?
No, Your Honor.
In the statement of facts that she just read, did she accurately and truly describe your conduct and your behavior on the dates and times in question in this case?
Yes, Your Honor.
The court will accept your plea of guilty to each of these 23 counts of this indictment. The court will accept your plea of guilty to each of the firearm specifications, and the court will find that you are guilty of each and every one of the 23 counts of the indictment and each and every one of the firearm specifications. Now, it's the court's understanding that that both the state and the defense have agreed that the court is not pronouncing the post-sentence at this time, the sentencing be deferred. Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Honor.
Agreed.
Is there anything else that either side wishes to put on the record concerning this hearing?
Your Honor, I apologize if I missed this, but I would ask the court to inquire, if they haven't already, of Mr. Myers and Mr. Mooney, just regarding the amount of time that they spent with Mr. Wagner leading up to this date and indicating whether they are or are not satisfied that this is in his best interest.
Your Honor, if I may speak first, as I think the court and counsel for the state are aware that as fate would have it, Mr. Mooney did begin another aggravated murder trial in a nearby county on April 12th, as a result of which it just happened to be that I was a little more involved with Jake, the state's counsel, leading up to the culmination of today's proceedings and the underlying agreement. However, Mr. Mooney had plenty of time. We were in there on the weekends. Tuesday, April 13th, it was a day off. Bill and I met with Jake. And as reflected in one of the paragraphs, just to think out loud about it in our written plea agreement, I think I can say for Bill both, and he'll speak if I misspeak, we are fully satisfied that this is not only in Jake's interest, which of course that's our duty, but we also believe it does serve his best wishes and his best interests. We're fully satisfied that he's gone eyes wide open into this agreement. He knows he's going to die in prison without any judicial release. And as he just said, and I appreciate Ms. Canepa mentioning it, and as I'm sure he'll say more when the day of sentencing arrives, as horrifying as this is for all, he is as sorry as he can be.
Did you have anything to add, Mr.?
No, Your Honor. Just
We need to go through these. You have not guilty pleas in place right now. And we need to deal with that, all right, first. So I'm going to ask you about if you're withdrawing your former pleas of not guilty to these. I'm going to do it individually. Are you withdrawing your plea of not guilty that you previously entered to count one of the indictment, wherein you are charged with aggravated murder, an unclassified felony in violation of 2903.01A of the revised code, the victim involved, the alleged victim involved in Kenneth Rhoden? Are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty to that charge?
yes, Your Honor.
What plea do you wish to enter to aggravated murder as charged in count one?
I am guilty, Your Honor.
And are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty to the specification one to the first count, which is the firearm specification read earlier, the 1-year firearm specification? You previously pled not guilty to that. Are you withdrawing that plea?
I am, Your Honor.
What plea do you wish to enter to specification one as to count one?
I am guilty, Your Honor.
All right. Are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty into specification two to the first count, which states, which is the 3-year firearm specification? Are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty to that specification?
I am, Your Honor.
What plea do you wish to enter to specification two to the first count?
I am guilty, Your Honor.
And finally, to specification 3 to the first count, which charges you with the 6-year firearm specification, which we read earlier. Are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty to that specification?
I am, Your Honor.
What plea do you wish to enter to specification 3 as to the first count?
I am guilty, Your Honor.
Are you at this time withdrawing your former plea of not guilty that you entered in count 2 of the indictment, wherein you are charged with aggravated murder in violation of section 2903.01A of the Ohio Revised Code, the alleged victim in that case being Chris Rhoden Sr.? Are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty to that charge?
I am, Your Honor.
What plea do you wish to enter to count 2 of the indictment charging you with the aggravated murder of Christopher Rhoden Sr.?
And I am guilty, Your Honor.
And are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty entered to specification 1 of the second count? That's the 1-year firearm specification that you previously pled not guilty to. Are you withdrawing that plea?
I am, Your Honor.
What plea do you wish to enter to specification 1 to the second count?
That I am guilty, Your Honor.
And to specification 2 to the second count, where you're charged with a 3-year firearm specification, are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty to that?
I am, Your Honor.
What plea do you wish to enter to specification 2 to the second count?
And I am guilty, Your Honor.
And finally, to specification 3 to the second count, where you are charged with a 6-year firearm specification, are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty entered to specification 3 to the second count?
I am, Your Honor.
What plea do you wish to enter to specification 3 to the second count?
And I am guilty, Your Honor.
Are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty that you entered to count 3 of the indictment, wherein you are charged with aggravated murder, in violation of section 2903.01A of the Ohio Revised Code, the alleged victim being Gary Rhoden?
I am, Your Honor.
And to count 3, charging you with the aggravated murder of Gary Rhoden, what plea do you wish to enter?
And I am guilty, Your Honor.
And are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty entered to count 1 to the third, specification 1 to the third count? That's the 1-year firearm specification to the third count. Are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty to that?
I am, Your Honor.
And to specification 1 to the third count, what plea do you wish to enter?
I am guilty, Your Honor.
And are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty entered to specification 2 to the third count? That is the 3-year firearm specification charged with respect to the third count.
I am, Your Honor.
And what plea do you wish to enter to specification 2 to the third count?
And I am guilty, Your Honor.
Are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty entered to specification 3 to the third count? That's the 6-year firearm specification charged with respect to the third count. Are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty to that?
I am, Your Honor.
What plea do you wish to enter to specification 3 to the third count?
And I am guilty, Your Honor.
As to count 4, are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty entered to the charge of aggravated murder in violation of section 2903.01A of the Ohio Revised Code, the alleged victim being Clarence Franklin Rhoden?
I am, Your Honor.
And what plea do you wish to enter to count 4, charging you with the aggravated murder of Clarence Franklin Rhoden?
And I am guilty, Your Honor.
And are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty entered to count 1, or entered to specification 1 as to the fourth count? That is the 1-year firearm specification as to the fourth count of the indictment. Are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty to that?
I am, Your Honor.
And to specification 1 to the fourth count, what plea do you wish to enter?
And I am guilty, Your Honor.
And are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty to specification 2 to the fourth count? That's the 3-year firearm specification charged with respect to the fourth count.
I am, Your Honor.
And what plea do you wish to enter to specification 2 to the fourth count?
I am guilty, Your Honor.
And are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty entered to specification 3 to the fourth count? That's the 6-year firearm specification charged with respect to the fourth count.
I am, Your Honor.
What plea do you wish to enter to specification 3 to the fourth count?
And I am guilty, Your Honor.
As to count 5, are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty that you entered to the charge of aggravated murder in violation of section 2903.01A of the Ohio Revised Code? The alleged victim of that offense being Hanna Hazel Gilley.
I am, Your Honor.
And to the charge of aggravated murder of Hanna Hazel Gilley, what plea do you wish to enter?
I am guilty, Your Honor.
And are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty that you entered to specification 1 to the fifth count? That's the 1-year firearm specification with respect to count 5.
I am, Your Honor.
And to specification 1 as to the fifth count, what plea do you wish to enter?
I am guilty, Your Honor.
And And are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty that you entered the specification 2 to the 5th count? That's the 3-year firearm specification to the 5th count.
I am, Your Honor.
What plea do you wish to enter to specification 2 to the 5th count?
That I am guilty, Your Honor.
And are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty entered to specification 3 of the 5th count? That's the 6-year firearm specification charged with respect to the 5th count.
I am, Your Honor.
What plea do you wish to enter to specification 3 to the 5th count?
I am guilty, Your Honor.
As to count 6, are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty entered to the charge of aggravated murder in violation of section 2903.01A of the Ohio Revised Code, the alleged victim being Dana Rhoden?
I am, Your Honor.
What plea do you wish to enter in count 6 to the charge of aggravated murder of Dana Rhoden?
I am guilty, Your Honor.
And are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty entered to specification 1 to the 6th count? That is the 1-year firearm specification charge with respect to the 6th count. Are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty to that?
I am, Your Honor.
What plea do you wish to enter to specification 1 to the 6th count?
I am guilty, Your Honor.
Are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty entered to specification 2 to the 6th count? That's the 3-year firearm specification charged with respect to the 6th count.
I am, Your Honor.
What plea do you wish to enter to specification 2 to the 6th count?
I am guilty, Your Honor.
And to specification 3 to the 6th count, that's the 6-year firearm specification charged with respect to the 6th count. Are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty entered to specification 3 to the 6th count?
I am, Your Honor.
What plea do you wish to enter to specification 3 to the 6th count?
I am guilty, Your Honor.
As to count 7, are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty entered to the charge of aggravated murder in violation of section 2903.01A of the Ohio Revised Code, the alleged victim being Hanna May Rhoden?
I am, Your Honor.
And what plea do you wish to enter in count 7 to the charge of aggravated murder of Hanna May Rhoden?
I am guilty, Your Honor.
And are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty entered to count 1 to the 7th count? That's the 1-year firearm specification to the 7th count.
I am, Your Honor.
What plea do you wish to enter to specification 1 to the 7th count?
I am guilty, Your Honor.
Are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty entered to specification 2 to the 7th count? That's the 3-year firearm specification charged with respect to the 7th count.
I am, Your Honor.
What plea do you wish to enter to specification 2 to the 7th count?
I am guilty, Your Honor.
And are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty entered to specification 3 to the 7th count? That's a 6-year firearm specification charged with respect to the 7th count.
I am, Your Honor.
What plea do you wish to enter to specification 3 to the 7th count?
I am guilty, Your Honor.
As to count 8, are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty that you entered to the charge of aggravated murder in violation of section 2903.01A, the alleged victim of the crime being Christopher Rhoden Jr.?
I am, Your Honor.
What plea do you wish to enter in count 8 to the charge of aggravated murder of Christopher Rhoden Jr.?
I am guilty, Your Honor.
Are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty entered to specification 1 to the 8th count? That's the 1-year firearm specification charged with respect to the 8th count.
I am, Your Honor.
What plea do you wish to enter to specification 1 to the 8th count?
I am guilty, Your Honor.
And to specification 2 to the 8th count, that's the 3-year firearm specification charged with respect to the 8th count. Are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty to that specification?
I am, Your Honor.
What plea do you wish to enter to specification 2 to the 8th count?
I am guilty, Your Honor.
And to specification 3 to the 8th count, that's a 6-year firearm specification. What plea, are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty entered to specification 3 to the 8th count?
I am, Your Honor.
What plea do you wish to enter to specification 3 to the 8th count?
I am guilty, Your Honor.
A first-degree felony as charged in count 10 of the indictment.
I am, Your Honor.
What plea do you wish to enter to the charge of aggravated burglary as charged in count 10 of the indictment?
I am guilty, Your Honor.
Are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty entered to specification 1 to the 10th count? That's the 1-year firearm specification charged with respect to count 10 of the indictment.
I am, Your Honor.
What plea do you wish to enter to specification 1 to the 10th count of the indictment?
I am guilty, Your Honor.
Are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty entered to specification 2 to the 10th count of the indictment? That's the 3-year firearm specification charge with respect to count 10.
I am, Your Honor.
What plea do you wish to enter to specification 2 to count 10?
I am guilty, Your Honor.
Are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty entered to specification 3 to the 10th count? That's a 6-year firearm specification with charge with respect to the 10th count.
I am, Your Honor.
What plea do you wish to enter to specification 3 to the 10th count?
I am guilty, Your Honor.
Are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty entered to the charge of aggravated burglary in violation of section 2911.11A1 and/or A2/2911.11B of the Ohio Revised Code, a first-degree felony as charged in count 11 of the indictment?
I am, Your Honor.
What plea do you wish to enter to aggravated burglary as charged in count 11 of the indictment?
I am guilty, Your Honor.
Are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty in count 1 to the 11th count? That's a 1-year firearm specification charge with respect to the 11th count.
I am, Your Honor.
What plea do you wish to enter to specification 1 to the 11th count of the indictment?
I am guilty, Your Honor.
Are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty entered to specification 2 to the 11th count? That's a 3-year firearm specification charge with respect to the 11th count.
I am, Your Honor.
What plea do you wish to enter to specification 2 to the 11th count?
I am guilty, Your Honor.
Are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty entered to specification 3 to the 11th count? That's the 6-year firearm specification charge with respect to the 11th count of the indictment.
I am, Your Honor.
What plea do you wish to enter to specification 3 to the 11th count of the indictment?
I am guilty, Your Honor.
Are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty entered to the charge of aggravated burglary in violation of section 2911.11A1 and/or A2/2911.11B of the Ohio Revised Code, a felony of the first degree, as charged in count 12 of the indictment?
I am, Your Honor.
What plea do you wish to enter to the charge of aggravated burglary as charged in count 12 of the indictment?
I am guilty, Your Honor.
Are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty entered to specification 1 to the 12th count? That's a 1-year firearm specification charge with respect to the 12th count.
I am, Your Honor.
What plea do you wish to enter to specification 1 to the 12th count?
I am guilty, Your Honor.
Are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty charged with respect to specification 2, your former plea of not guilty as to specification 2 of the 12th count to the 12th count? That's the 3-year firearm specification. Are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty entered to that charge, or that count, or that specification?
I am, Your Honor.
What plea do you wish to enter to specification 2 to the 12th count of the indictment?
I am guilty, Your Honor.
And are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty entered to specification 3 to the 12th count of the indictment? That's the 6-year firearm specification charge with respect to count 12 of the indictment.
I am, Your Honor.
What plea do you wish to enter to specification 3 to the 12th count?
I am guilty, Your Honor.
Are you at this time withdrawing your former plea of not guilty entered to the 13th count of the indictment, wherein you are charged with aggravated burglary in violation of section 2911.11A1 and/or A2/2911.11B of the Ohio Revised Code, a first-degree felony, again, is charged in count 13 of the indictment.
I am, Your Honor.
What plea do you wish to enter to aggravated burglary as charged in count 13 of the indictment?
I am guilty, Your Honor.
And are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty entered to specification 1 to the 13th count? That's the 1-year firearm specification charge with respect to the 13th count.
I am, Your Honor.
And what plea do you wish to enter to specification 1 to the 13th count of the indictment?
I am guilty, Your Honor.
And are you at this time withdrawing your former plea of not guilty entered to specification 2 to the 13th count? That is the 3-year firearm specification charge with respect to the 13th count.
I am, Your Honor.
What plea do you wish to enter to specification 2 to the 13th count?
I am guilty, Your Honor.
Are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty entered to count 3 to the 13th count? That's specification 3 to the 13th count. That's the 6-year firearm specification charge with respect to the 13th count. Are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty to that specification?
I am, Your Honor.
What plea do you wish to enter to specification 3 to the 13th count?
I am guilty, Your Honor.
Are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty entered to count 14 of the indictment, wherein you are charged with unlawful possession of dangerous ordnance, a 5th-degree felony in violation of section 2923.17A1/2923.17D?
I am, Your Honor.
What plea do you wish to enter to the charge of unlawful possession of dangerous ordnance as charged in count 14?
I am guilty, Your Honor.
Are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty entered to the charge of tampering with evidence in violation of section 2921.12A1/2921.12B of the Ohio Revised Code, a felony of the 3rd degree as charged in count 15 of the indictment?
I am, Your Honor.
What plea do you wish to enter to the charge of tampering with evidence, a felony of the 3rd degree as charged in count 15?
I am guilty, Your Honor.
Are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty entered to the charge of tampering with evidence in violation of section 2921.12A2/2921.12B of the Ohio Revised Code, a felony of the 3rd degree as charged in count 16 of the indictment?
I am, Your Honor.
What plea do you wish to enter to the charge of tampering with evidence as charged in count 16?
I am guilty, Your Honor.
Are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty entered to the charge of tampering with evidence in violation of section 2921.12A1/2921.12B of the Ohio Revised Code, a 3rd degree felony as charged in count 17 of the indictment?
I am, Your Honor.
What plea do you wish to enter to the charge of tampering with evidence as charged in count 17?
I am guilty, Your Honor.
Are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty entered to the charge of forgery in violation of section 2913.31A1 and/or A2/2913.31C1B of the Ohio Revised Code, a felony of the 5th degree as charged in count 18 of the indictment?
I am, Your Honor.
What plea do you wish to enter to the charge of forgery as charged in count 18 of the indictment?
I am guilty, Your Honor.
Are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty entered to the charge of unauthorized use of property in violation of section 2913.04B/2913.04G2 of the Ohio Revised Code, a felony of the 5th degree as charged in count 19 of the indictment?
I am, Your Honor.
What plea do you wish to enter to the charge of unauthorized use of property as charged in count 19 of the indictment?
I am guilty, Your Honor.
Are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty entered to the charge of interception of wire, oral, or electronic communications in violation of section 2933.52A1/2933.52C, a felony of the 4th degree as charged in count 20 of the indictment?
I am, Your Honor.
What plea do you wish to enter to the charge of interception of wire, oral, or electronic communications as charged in count 20 of the indictment?
I am guilty, Your Honor.
Are you withdrawing your former plea entered to the charge of obstructing justice in violation of section 2921.32A4 and/or A5/2921.32C3 of the Ohio Revised Code, a felony of the 5th degree as charged in count 21 of the indictment?
I am.
What plea do you wish to enter to the charge of obstructing justice as charged in count 21 of the indictment?
I am guilty, Your Honor.
Are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty entered to the charge of engaging in a pattern of corrupt activity, a 1st degree felony in violation of section 2923.32A1/2923.32B1 of the Ohio Revised Code as charged in count 22 of the indictment?
I am, Your Honor.
What plea do you wish to enter to the charge of engaging in a pattern of corrupt activity as charged in count 22 of the indictment?
I am guilty, Your Honor.
And are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty entered to specification 1 to the 22nd count? That's the 1-year firearm specification charge with respect to count 22 of the indictment?
I am, Your Honor.
What plea do you wish to enter to specification 1 to count 22 of the indictment?
I am guilty, Your Honor.
Are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty entered to specification 2 to the 22nd count of the indictment? That's the 3-year firearm specification charge with respect to count 22 of the indictment.
I am, Your Honor.
What plea do you wish to enter to specification 2 to the 22nd count?
I am guilty, Your Honor.
And are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty entered to specification 3 to the 22nd count of the indictment? That is the 6-year firearm specification charge with respect to the 22nd count.
I am, Your Honor.
What plea do you wish to enter to specification 3 to the 22nd count of the indictment?
I am guilty, Your Honor.
And are you withdrawing your former plea of not guilty entered to the charge of unlawful sexual conduct with a minor, a 4th-degree felony in violation of section 2907.04A/2907.04B1 of the Ohio Revised Code, a 4th-degree felony as charged in count 23 of the indictment?
I am, Your Honor.
And what plea do you wish to enter to the charge of unlawful sexual conduct with a minor, a 4th-degree felony as charged in count 23 of the indictment?
I am guilty, Your Honor.
Well, I just had the opportunity, Fran and I did, to meet with the family members. It was for me, very emotional. 5 years ago today, I was here and we met with family members in the church. And I committed to them that we would find who did this and that we would bring them to justice. There was a lot of justice done today. So this is not over. I can't comment about the other 3 cases, but you heard the story in the courtroom. So this is, no one who is not involved in this investigation will ever know how difficult this was. Starting with really no evidence. It is a tribute, and I can't name everybody who got this done. First of all, the family, because they stuck with us throughout this. They stuck with us for five years, which is tough to do when you're in a family and we don't have answers for you. And we couldn't give them answers for a long, long, long time, and they still stuck with us. But, you know, I want to say, prosecuting attorney, Rob Junk, the people who you saw in the courtroom today, Andy Wilson, who's on loan from the governor's office, former prosecutor in Clark County, Angie Canepa. Angie Canepa was embedded in this case for 5 years throughout all the investigation. And so when she was in court talking, she'd lived this case for 5 years. I just wrote a couple names down. I apologize, but the sheriff's office, Al Lewis, walked out here a little while ago, investigator. Former Sheriff Reeder. Former Sheriff Reeder never gave up on this case, and he was with us the entire way. BCI. This is the biggest case in the history of BCI, by far. Tens of thousands of hours were put in on this case. And it was really a combination of old-fashioned police work, just grunt, gritty, slow, laborious police work, plus the new technology that we have today. 2 young ladies that you may have seen in courtroom, the 2 analysts. Analysts did an absolutely phenomenal job. So it was, you know, Tom Stickrath, who heads up BCI, Mike Trout, Ben Suver, Ryan Scheiderer, Attorney Generals Steve Shoemaker, Matt Donahue. The 2 analysts, I want to just, Dana Forney, Julia Eveslag. No one will ever know what they did, but I'm telling you, I was in the briefings and they put stuff together. You just absolutely couldn't believe. So this is a day of where justice was done. A day we've been waiting for a long time.
Governor, 1 year after the murders, you asked Geneva Rhoden to do a videotape, a plea for anybody who knew anything to come forward. It's very emotional. We are now 4 years past that. You spoke to her today. What did she have to say?
Well, she came up to me and we hugged.
That was it? Just a hug?
We talked a little bit, but look, I mean, you lose a family member. If
Eight.
you're, you know, one member, how about 8? I don't know how you survive it. I mean, I don't know how you go on, but, you know, she goes on, she's got other family members, and she goes on, and she's tough and strong, but, you know, the pain, Fran and I lost one daughter, and I just can't imagine what she goes through, but she was there today.
Governor, what
She was there today.
What did you want to convey to the family today? What was the message you wanted to let them know?
I want to thank the family for hanging with us. Look, it's not easy when people, investigators can't tell you anything, and they just have to sort of trust you. So they hung in there for this entire time with us. So very, very grateful. I want to come here and tell them thank you. Wanted to tell them that justice was done. I told them in there, I said, I can't comment about the other 3 cases when I come out and talk to the news media. I had a little comment to them, but this was justice, and you know, I never lost faith in this case. I never thought that we were not going to solve it. I felt all the way through that we would solve this case.
You've been part of many criminal cases. Where does this one rank in your life?
Well, I didn't prosecute it, so I'm for a while, as long as I was Attorney General, I was actively involved in every time one of the BCI agents reminded me, he said every time we wanted to tear something down, I guess Angie told me, she said every time we wanted to go and tear something down, you said go ahead and do it, and we'll get you the trucks and equipment or whatever we need to do it. So that was my role. But there's never been a case in Ohio history like this.
How did this plea deal come across? How did this plea deal come about, Governor?
I'm not going to comment on that. I can't comment on that. That would have to come from the prosecutors, and they probably can't tell you.
The judge today talked about how well planned, how well orchestrated this murder was, that they used surveillance cameras, they had hacked into people's social media accounts. You had obviously known some of this. It's really must be disturbing to you to know to the extent that they did this.
Well, we've all read or heard of the book In Cold Blood. This was cold, cold, cold blood. I mean, this was calculated, planned out.
And now that they have...
And it just, it just chills you to think about the calculation that goes into something like this. And, we couldn't tell you that. We knew it. I don't know what date we finally started really zeroing in on them. But if you recall, when this started, we had stories, and we didn't know, they might have been true. Mexican drug cartel coming in. We had this, we had that. And it was a while. It was a good while before we started zeroing in on this family. And then it was a case of, okay, let's be patient. You got to be patient. Let's take our time. Last thing we want to do is prematurely indict. So we waited and waited and waited till, frankly, we got to the point one day, and we had a discussion. I'll say this, former Sheriff Rhoden. He looks up and he says, boys, we got to go. And I said, yeah, you're right. I mean, my question always to the team was, is there anything else we can do? That's what I always ask every day. What else can we do? And at some point, we got to the point where we all just looked at each other and said, there's nothing else we can do. We got to go with this. We got to go with what we got. And we felt it was a good case.
To that end, Governor, this is so complex and it's taken so long. Was there ever a point where you were like, I don't know when this is going to cross a finish line. I don't know if it's going to cross a finish line. Did you ever have that moment?
I had a moment of not knowing when. I didn't know how long it was going to take. I mean, it could have taken 10 years. I mean, I didn't know. But I just felt all the way through that eventually you get enough breaks. And you make enough breaks, frankly. Look, I just want to close by saying the team that did this, first of all, thanks to the family for hanging with us. Second, this was a phenomenal team. This DCI team, prosecuting attorney team, sheriff's department team. You know, they just worked and worked and worked and worked. And like I said, unless you were there day after day, you'd have no idea what this took. We started with nothing. You know, when I came down here, the next day I went in and looked at the crime scenes, and you know, we had analysts down here. They beat me down here. They were down. I was coming from Cleveland, and they beat me here. I mean, the sheriff said, "Call us in quickly." That doesn't always happen. He called BCI in right away, and that was the absolute right thing to do, so we could start going. But when you started going through the evidence, it just, you know, you didn't have a lot to start with. But you just kept building the case. So.
Governor, I did just want to ask one more question. You said justice today, but this isn't over yet. There are still other cases. How do you support the family moving forward? They've been through so much already.
Well, look, this family's been through hell. Family's been through hell. While today I'm sure was a very gratifying day, it couldn't have been an easy day. They've got to be leaving here just totally exhausted and you know, emotionally spent. But these are tough people. These are strong people. These are strong people. They'll continue to go forward.
Why did you feel the need to be here tonight?
I want to see the family. You know, we met not just that first day 5 years ago, but we met periodically. We'd go in usually into the church out there, and we would meet, and you know, we got to know them, and I felt I owed it for them to be here and to thank them. They're the ones that suffered. They're the ones that have gotten their lives just totally, you know, upended. You know, I will say some of them showed me some pictures of some of the kids, and that was a very great thing.
Yeah, I'm fine.